and this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio!
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When your doctor tells you you have bad cholesterol or blockages in the arteries, what do? When diet and exercise is not enough, we try medications and hope for the best. For the last 2 decades, I have been telling people about a natural method to help solve these problems and more. Extendovite can help maintain cardiovascular health and lower blood lipid levels in adults. The 7 herbs in Extendovite are known to work together synergistically to get the results we hope for. There are many testimonials on Extendovite's effect on circulatory-related ailments. Get Extendovite today to start your journey back to a healthier life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or see us on amazon.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
So where in Hawaii are you guys?
Supported radio, and now we return you to...
Maui, nice.
Okay, yes, okay.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at revolution.radio. And I am your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, and our producer is Thomas Becker, also known as a Mad Painter. And our guest today is Earl Grey Anderson. I love the name, Earl Grey. I drink the tea all the time. So Earl Grey Anderson is the Chief Investigator and Assistant State Director for MUFON in Southern California, with more than 400 cases under his belt. He's also a member of MUFON's STAR team, as well as a member of MUFON's Experiencer Research team. So we'll have to talk about that. Let's see what else. Earl became interested in UFOs at a very early age when his mother, who had worked as Howard Hughes' personal secretary, told her young son about the deep underground military base she had worked in for Hughes back in the 1950s. She also let Earl know that extraterrestrials were a very real thing and that our government was well aware of this. And Earl does radio, podcasts, and speaking engagements, is a professional musician and a nurse, and he resides with his wife in Los Angeles, California. So before I bring him on, I want to do a little sound check with my beloved Dr. Sasha. Hi, sweetheart. You there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear my sound okay?
Good.
Hey, look, I'm a professor. I'm hung up on data. I read about the Earl Grey, who was the advisor to King Jamie, who is the boy king and then the adult king of Scotland, who believed in witchcraft. And so Earl Grey humored him, and he staged a witchcraft thing, and Jamie took it for real, and then he went around the country burning people, and if the jury found him innocent of witchcraft, he burned the jury. And then this guy got transferred over to England to be its king and wrote that awful King James Bible. But anyway, that's just a historical one. We got a contemporary one. I'm eager to hear you, Earl.
Well, yeah.
I'm not that guy.
So are you named after? Well, Jamie was the man. Earl. So the guy was the advisory. Anyway, is there any reason why they call you Earl Grey? Is that like a family name?
I can tell you all about it, Janet. You know, I'm a musician.
Oh, really?
And I work here in Los Angeles. And the way that my stage name, which is Earl Grey, I've been Earl Grey since 1989, came about, was I used to play a lot of clubs in Los Angeles, and there was another gentleman. My birth name is Earl Anderson. And there was another guy by the name of Eric Anderson. Two guys, actually. There's a folk artist, but the main guy that became a problem in LA was the guy who played Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar. We used to play some of the same venues, and our audiences would get confused. I would have a gig at this place called At My Place in Santa Monica, beautiful old venue that unfortunately isn't there anymore. And I showed up to do my gig, and there was this big crowd waiting to hear a wonderful R&B artist. Same thing happened to him. He had a gig there, and he was all, ready to go out on stage, and he's looking out and he's seeing these kind of, more of a long-haired, hippie kind of crowd that I usually draw.
Uh-huh.
And it was kind of this problem. So, I decided, and at the time I was working out of my little base in the area, was sort of a group of songwriters and musicians that we used to gather at this place called the Iguana Cafe, which was in North Hollywood. And the LA rock band X used to hang out there. And so, of course, their lead singer was John Doe. Their other singer was Exene Cervenka. Well, these weren't their real names, And people, it seemed like the late 80s, and it was kind of a popular thing to change your name and have a pseudonym anyway. And if it was sort of a wise ass kind of pseudonym or something, all the better. So I was thinking about pseudonyms and then I came upon a box of tea. And that was the origin of it. Now, mind you, this is before Star Trek The Next Generation was a thing. It came out the same year. Mm-hmm. So everybody thought that I had changed my name to correspond to Earl Grey Hot, Captain Picard's famous line. But no, I was actually Earl Grey before that was a thing. But of course, there was the Earl Grey to the Mad King James, who wrote that terrible Bible that Sasha was talking about. Yeah, it wasn't the best translation of the Koine Greek and the Aramaic, was it? It was pretty bad. But there you go. I have no correlation to that guy, but to the box of tea, yes.
Yes, okay.
And as a UFO investigator, it works quite well, doesn't it? I mean, so far it hasn't scared anybody off when I tried to hook my actual birth name, my Christian name at the end, just so that I'm, when I go and call up an experiencer and interview them or something, they're not going to freak out and think that I'm like a little 3-foot tall guy with black eyeballs, right?
Right.
So it seems to work. So there you go. That's my origin story, I guess.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Well, I'm really curious. There's a lot I want to talk about, but I'm right going to this your mother's job as Howard Hughes' personal secretary. Now, did you meet Howard Hughes?
No. That's an interesting question, because my mom, in all the years that she worked for him, I believe it was 4 years, maybe it was about 4 years, maybe a little over. She worked for Howard Hughes until 1958, May 1958. She stopped working for him when I was born. But she originally was hired as one of his 2 private secretaries. My mom was an amazing stenographer. She went back to the days where you could do, it was shorthand is what she would always write.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote herself a grocery list, you couldn't read any of my mom's notes. You really couldn't. And so,
right.
But Howard Hughes had 2 different secretaries. He never would meet with them face to face, even though their offices were adjacent to his office. And my mom only saw him in person one time, and she wasn't supposed to. He would always leave the building, and they would tell everybody over the intercom system, the boss is leaving, and you're supposed to stay in your little cubicle office until, 5 minutes passed, and then it was all clear. You could go, right? Because he didn't want human contact. He was a germaphobe. The film The Aviator was actually quite correct about Hughes's paranoias, and he was a germaphobe. And he had his own specific ideas of what cleanliness was, and human contact wasn't one of them. But once my mom said that she was leaving the building, and apparently he was a little slower than usual, and the 5 minutes had passed, and she opened up her door out to the parking garage, and lo and behold, there was Howard Hughes at the end of the hallway, sort of Chaplin-esque is the way that she said it. He had his hat on, had a little briefcase, and he was kind of waddling out the door. This was after he had the bad plane crash, so he did kind of waddle when he walked. And it was missing was really Charlie Chaplin's cane, is the way that my mom described it to me. But
or Kleenex boxes.
She never mentioned the Kleenex boxes, but the one story she told me was that he loved See's candy fudge. But he never felt safe eating something that was that was made in a factory. He wanted things to be cooked to his own specifications of cleanliness. So he gave my mom the job of getting the recipe from See's Candy for their fudge. And he said, price is no object. It does not matter to me how much they want. I just want that recipe, and I want my own people to make the same recipe for me for the fudge. He would only eat so many things. He had a very unhealthy diet for a guy who was a germaphobe and afraid for his health. So my mom did contact See's Candy. She was able to get the recipe. She said that it was an extraordinary amount of money, and that they had to sign agreements that recipe wasn't going to go anywhere else. And so she did get the fudge recipe for him. So as far as Kleenex goes, she never talked about that, but the fudge, yeah, she talked about that.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to know I'll tell you the weird part of the story now. Now, when I was very, very, very young, when I was about 5 years old, my mom told me an extraordinary story. And I remember her telling me, and I remember it so well. And I'm one of those guys who, my mind is like like a bear trap. I remember stuff from when I was 3 years old. And what she told me was, she said, well, Earl, I worked in this deep underground base. And we would go out there, and there were these scientists that we got from Germany that worked down in this base. And it was a mile under the desert, was the way she described it. She said the middle of nowhere. And the way she said, she just talked to me like I was an adult. So it really stood out to me as a child. She said that they took me out there, and I had these 2 guys, these security guys, and they took us to this shack, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And once you got to this shack, they didn't tell me what I was there for, but there was an elevator. She said it was an Otis elevator like you'd see in a skyscraper. And those were her exact words, and I remember so well, Otis elevator like in a skyscraper. But of course, it wasn't going anywhere up. She got in this thing, and she thought maybe it was going to go a couple of floors down, and she said that it kept on going down. And she said, I was scared. She said, I had butterflies in my stomach. And she said when the doors opened, there was a little city down there, and that they got around in golf carts. She said that there was a movie theater, a bowling alley, and that they had a French cafe where it had these little patio tables with yellow umbrellas over them. And she laughed. She said, you don't really need umbrellas if you're in a cave. But there they were. They had drugstores, and she said I could even get my hair done down there. Now, this was back in the late 1950s. And so that story stuck with me, and as I got older, I kept bringing it up. And my mom wasn't thrilled about that, you know, especially when I was 10 years old in fourth grade. I went and we had show and tell kind of thing in class, and people were talking about what their parents did. I remember a couple of kids had their parents come into the class. I just had my mom's story, and so I kind of told my mom's story in class. And the teacher stopped me. She later on she scolded me. She said, "You were lying. You know, there's no such thing.
You were lying."
And they called my mom in. Now, you know, the other thing I didn't talk about yet is my mom also talked about alien life. She said that it was a very real thing. She said that there is intelligent life in the universe. We know about it. We know very, very much about it. And my mom told me this like it was 1963 or so.
Was she saying that because of her job?
You know, later on,
indicate that she knew that?
My mom later on,
go ahead.
She said that she quit working for Howard Hughes back in 1958 when I was born. And she said as time went on, my mom actually became a headhunter. She became a headhunter for Lockheed Skunk Works, for Boeing, for Northrop, for all the major aerospace companies. She sort of single-handedly peopled the Rockwell Science Center in Thousand Oaks. That was her baby, and she would look for talent for them. And so this is what she wound up doing, and that was in the 1970s. When she started doing this again, she became sort of closed-lipped because her security clearances were important to her again. And, you know, I mean, you don't want somebody to do show and tell talking about this secretive stuff when you're actually working in the field. So my mom became more closed-lipped about it. But every once in a while, she would become more loquacious and more open to talking. It would usually be around a movie. Like I took my mom to see Star Wars. It was the second day. It was 1977. Like 2 days after the film had premiered, and we happened to be in Santa Monica. And so I took my mom to see the film because it was the kind of film I've always been obsessed with outer space ever since I was a child. So I took her to see the film, and when the lights came on and the curtains closed, my mom just started talking. And I guess I was about 17 or 18 years old, 17 years old when it came out. And my mom, what she said was, she said, "Son, you have no idea how close to the truth this film was. That there is intelligent life in outer space, and Star Wars is not far-fetched." I remember the words so clearly, you know. And at the time, now I'd sort of become religious. I used to go to Bible studies and stuff, and I didn't really want to hear this at the time. It went against my personal philosophy, you know. I thought that, you know, mankind was, you know, the crown of creation and all this. And my mom suddenly talking about ETs. But she kept going, and she said that, you know, that it's a very real thing that the government knows and has even had contact with them. And she went on to say, you know, well, they're not all necessarily all that nice, son. Which kind of made me have to think, you know. So I grew up with this strange esoteric knowledge. Now, as time went on, my mom became very closed-lipped about it because I would try to trip her up and try to get her to talk more, you know. And since she was working in the field again, it did not behoove her to talk about this sort of thing. It's best not ask such questions, son. But
Right.
Back in the late 1990s, it was 1999, in fact, my mom she'd gotten cancer for the 6th time. Now, this was after some people had successfully sued Area 51 for similar stuff. And I brought this up to my mom, and I said, that you should go after the government, because we were not rich by any long shot. We were just a very middle-class family. At times, my dad had rough times with his work, and my mom was able to sustain us, and the mortgage was always paid and such. But it was certainly not worth going through cancer 6 different times like my mom did. And they were all unrelated cancers. It wasn't like it would metastasize somewhere else. She would be okay for 10, 15 years, and then it would pop up somewhere else. And it finally got her. And I talked to my mom about it. I said, that we should lawyer up and we should go and sue whoever exposed you to this, because they didn't take care of you. And
what was she exposed to? What was she exposed to?
That was something that she did not say, and I didn't say. I didn't say, was it nukes or was it, but it was something that was poisonous to her that had irradiated her, obviously. And she didn't deny that. My mom's last word on the subject was, she said, son, when I went into what I did, I knew that there were risks, but just like somebody would join the military and know that your life is on the line, that's the way that I approached it. And so I would never sue my government. I was doing my patriotic duty, and I would do it again. And that was sort of the end of the subject for her. It was like 2 or 3 weeks later, she passed away. She was gone.
Wow.
But,
so what did you want to, was there anything more you wanted to ask her before she passed?
Oh, I wanted to ask her a lot of stuff.
What would you say?
She wouldn't talk about a lot of it. She wouldn't talk about it as far as specifics went. She was very proud about what she had done. If I asked too much, I would sort of get the cocked eyebrow. It was almost like a Spock look, Mr. Spock, with a raised eyebrow and kind of like, you got to be kidding, no, I'm not going to tell you.
But what did you intuit? You're a tuned in dude. What did you get from her by your intuition?
Well, my feeling is that she was part of the Operation Paperclip, because she mentioned that she had met and knew Werner von Braun. She said he was a charming man, that he used to call her Betty Grace, which was her first name and her middle name. My mom was Betty Grace Maiden was her maiden name. And so I guess that she had met Werner when she was working in the underground base, that he was working there as well. And she mentioned other names too, Oberth, the other German rocket scientist, and all these guys. They early on. We know that Werner von Braun believed that ET was a real thing. He all but told us that. He told us things that we should be aware of. That if the government could possibly do a false flag someday and use ET as a common enemy, but my mom had great respect for him, and I would play the devil's advocate. I would go, well, wasn't he a Nazi, Mom? How can you say he's charming? And my mom said what Werner told me was that we built the rockets right, but we sent them to the wrong planet. In other words, the V2 rockets, they went crashing down on London. And my mom said that, he just wanted to go to the moon. He wanted mankind to be in space. So he was going to do that however he could. And he happened to be in Germany where things went awry and went wrong. And that's where he was kind of stuck. But according to my mom, he was thrilled to be an American, thrilled to be working on Project Apollo, and that to at least as far as my mom could see, that was sort of the realization of his dreams right there. And then, yes, he got to finally send a rocket to the right planet, our sister planet, the moon.
Now, are you following that new series called Strange Angel on CBS about Jack Parsons and JPL Labs and how Jack Parsons was communicating with what's his name? We just mentioned his name. Who was the German? Wernher von Braun. Yeah, Jack Parsons at 18 started to talk to Werner about fuel, what to use for fuel, and they were communicating. Then it's a fascinating show, and it talks about the Nazis and how they got involved with the satanic rituals of Aleister Crowley.
Sure.
It's
I haven't seen the show.
Are you watching that? Oh,
I guess I'm going to have to set my DVR. Is it Netflix or what's it on?
No, it's CBS, and
really?
First season is complete, and the second season starts on the 13th of June. And it was
I have
fascinating.
something new to watch. I have something new to watch.
And I think it's like soft disclosure because I don't want to tell you about it because it's just I couldn't stop. I just kept going. I got to watch another episode.
No spoilers, Janet.
Yeah,
I'll have to watch that.
But it's been out for a year. I was surprised to find it, and it's the back end of the early days of the space race, and Jack Parsons was devoted to getting to the moon. That was his whole life mission, and he said he used sex magic rituals with Aleister Crowley's blessing, and that's why we got into space. It was his place.
And I've heard the story, and of course the guy from Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, he was part of that as well,
I think
we don't think of that as necessarily
his wife and married him.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely an interesting period, and I think that these guys were sort of, throwing darts at the dartboard, seeing what would stick more or less, and that Tesla, Nikola Tesla supposedly made contact as well, and you have to wonder how much of human ingenuity is sort of been bootstrapped by our visitors. I know it's a very real phenomenon, and it doesn't surprise me. But I'll have to watch the show. My wife and I are kind of sort of now that Game of Thrones is over. Right?
Leonardo probably was Leonardo was probably a contactee in, like Tesla.
Da Vinci, I could see that. I think that our visitors have been here for maybe forever. They've maybe been here forever. There's like the film 2001, and I forced my parents to take me to that when it came out. It was my 10th birthday, and I've been obsessed by E.T. all of my life. It's something that I was born with, and I'm not sure why. And maybe, my mom said the last time that she went into the little underground city, she was pregnant with me. So, maybe they had some kind of a rate or who knows, I don't know. That's for sure. Why
what
do you?
Year were you born?
1958.
Yeah, well, wait, 58. Okay, I was born in 54. So, of course, Dr. Les and I are Anunnaki researchers, so we've written 4 books. He has Dr. Lesson's just finishing a 5th book, which we'll probably have out in a month or so. But that's that's kind of like recent history. They're finding anomalies and giant skeletons and things going back way further back in time than the Anunnaki, who's theoretically came here 40,000 to 50,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So, how does MUFON treat that information? With the Ancient Alien series, what do they have now? 13 years or something under their belt, 14 years.
Ancient Aliens does really well.
Treat that kind of. But how does MUFON address that information?
MUFON is very, very open to all of this. The way that Jan Harzan configures MUFON is sort of as a clearinghouse for all things UFO, all things ET. Now that's gotten him in trouble sometimes when he's had, less than scientific speakers at symposiums and such. Poor Jan sort of gets the rough end of that sometimes from people that would have it differently than that. But I think that that's a good thing. I think that you want to have a clearinghouse for all things, ET and UFO. And so MUFON, it's like we do love to have a scientific basis. I mean, that is in our little credo, the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. This is our creed. But the science of UFOs, you have to remember, is it has fuzzy edges to it. So do modern physics. I mean, a wave that acts like a particle that acts like a wave, they have to come up with a new word for it, so they call it a wavicle, which is kind of a nonsense word. But to me, UFOs kind of are very large things that act like the very smallest things in the universe. They're large things that can disappear, shoot off and defy, the laws of thermodynamics, and reappear somewhere, almost like the Cheshire Cat's grin. And maybe they are grinning at us. It seems like ET has a sense of humor sometimes. So, and this is science, particle physics is very weird, and quantum entanglement has a lot to do, I think, with, a lot has to do with consciousness and quantum entanglement. And I know Jan Harzen is very much into that because of, when he went to a lecture back in the early 90s, I think, where it was Ben Rich, who was heading up Lockheed Skunk Works. Jan asked him, well, how does interstellar travel work? How do you travel from point A to point B across the universe without, having long time dilations and coming back and having to meet your great-great-grandchildren? And Ben Rich told him, he said, well, how does ESP work? And Jan told him, he said, well, every point in the universe is connected to every other point in the universe. And he pointed at him and he said, exactly. So, this is the kind of strange esoteric science that we're dealing with now, which is our new reality. And, there's so much that we don't understand. I mean, dark matter makes up most of the universe and we don't even understand what it is yet. So it's really a wide open field, and it's kind of beautiful how everything, the soft disclosure that's been going on, with what To the Stars Academy has been doing, and I don't know if you guys saw the Unknown show the other night that was on History Channel, but it was really wonderful. Well, it was about the Nimitz affair.
Okay, it's called Unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll have to watch it. And where was that on? I'm going to make a note.
It was on the History Channel.
It's a
History Channel.
Okay.
It's a 6-part miniseries, and it's what the To the Stars Academy guys have been doing. And that's, Hal Puthoff and Tom DeLonge and
yes,
Luis Elizondo and all those guys. It was quite a wonderful show, and as far as I'm concerned, it was official disclosure. The pilots that went on are talking about the Nimitz affair that happened back in 2004. That seems to be the crux of their argument. Is the Nimitz incident where they had these UFOs that were going from 38,000 feet to sea level, and they sent a squadron of F-18s out to investigate, and they saw these tic-tac shaped 40-foot long UFOs that were traveling Mach 6 and even faster, and not creating fireballs, not creating sonic booms. They were sort of almost like they had ESP. They knew where the pilots were going to wind up going, their cap points. And they just showed up there, showed up there like nobody's business waiting for them. They had their radar blocked at certain points. They had, it was intelligent maneuvers by obviously intelligently controlled craft that are beyond anything that we can do with our current technology that we know of anyway.
Well, that's what a couple, I think Greg Cameron was saying. They know what we're thinking before we think it. So he was saying, basically, we couldn't really shoot them down because they know what we're thinking before we think them. Oops, sorry, got some feedback. And so the theory was that the Roswell crash and other crashes are really, what do you call it, Trojan horses.
Trojan horse.
They deliver this information because they want us to quicken. They want us to accelerate our knowledge. So, then, what other better way to get it than make us think, oh, we shot them down. Look at this. We have this captured. But the truth of the matter is they've been delivering this stuff to us for 70, 80, 100 years. Yeah. So
I believe that.
Wake up.
One of the guys that we interviewed was a pilot, and he was ordered to scramble with another pilot, but he left. The guy that was supposed to load his missiles didn't do it properly, and so this guy and his partner, two airplanes went out, and their orders were take it down. The other guy got in position to fire, and the UFO destroyed his plane, and then the UFO flew around and around this guy, like laughing, I know that your weapons system doesn't work, and then buzzed off.
Cat and mouse. Well, I was talking to Bruce. I was talking text with Bruce
because I got a feedback.
Sure. Well, this is what Dr. Bruce Maccabee had to say about this. We were texting a little bit a couple days ago, and he wrote this on Facebook. This is Dr. Bruce Maccabee, one of the greatest scientists that have ever been interested in this phenomena that we're obsessed with. And what he had to say was, he said, I'm just going to read his quote. He said, they want us to know that they are here and have superior capabilities and technology. To assure that we see them, they play with us. Because of this playing, most of the technical abilities that have been reported recently as if they were new discoveries, like extreme acceleration, have been known to the Air Force and Navy more than 70 years. And I thought that he put that really beautifully. And they are kind of playing cat and mouse with us. I mean, I think that they don't want to destroy us. They want us to remain a vibrant civilization. I think that if they wanted to harm us, it would have happened a long, long time ago. We know that they can turn our nukes off. We know that they can outrun anything that we can certainly build. But they want us to see their capabilities, and they play with us, and there's almost a little humorous element that's in there, which that hardens me. I'm glad that E.T. perhaps has a sense of humor.
Oh, they seem to. Now, Have you had any contact yourself with ETs?
I've had a couple of strange experiences. Now, I working for MUFON. My boss at MUFON is Jeff Krause. He's my state director, my mentor, and my dear friend. And his whole attitude about the phenomena is, he says, keep an open mind, but don't let your brain fall out. And I think that's a pretty good creed. I hold on to that. But sometimes you got to remember. This it's not magic. But like Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction author, said, that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And sometimes it is very much like magic to us, when they can pop in and pop out, come through your wall and stop time, give you missing time, take your memories. All these are very real things. And, but when I went into this, I went in with a very, very scientifically principled, mindset, and I still keep that. But I've learned that science has fuzzy edges, that, what we're dealing with in ufology is maybe more like what particle physicists are dealing with. They're dealing with things that seem to break the laws of the very physics that they're part of. And, so in my own investigations, the first unknown that I ever closed was a gentleman who lived out in Bakersfield, California area, and kind of a no-nonsense guy. And he and his family, they were taking their newborn child to the kid's aunt's house. And so they had to drive through the desert. They were driving at night through the Great American Desert up near China. Oh, what do they call that area? You know, it was like Palmdale. It was close to the Palmdale, Lancaster area. Is that right? They were in the high desert area. And they stopped the car because I could actually tell you the guy's name because he didn't want to go anonymous. Jeff Edgman pulled the car over because he had to use nature's restroom for a couple of minutes. So in the meantime, his wife got out of the car, and they were both looking up at the stars, and he was like saying, "Look at how bright the stars are, how beautiful." While he's standing there looking up, his wife is looking up with him. When the stars start moving, they were constellations that he hadn't seen before. And they moved around him almost as if they were surrounding them. And they started as they watched, they saw these stars drop to the desert floor. He's standing there watching this, and he's watching the stars are like coming towards him and towards his wife. He looks next to him. He looks over to the left, and his wife is no longer there. She didn't walk away. He would have heard her shuffling or would have noticed it, but she was suddenly not next to him. And he said that his wife spoke to him, except it wasn't his wife speaking, he said. And he said that his wife spoke in a very sort of almost mechanical type voice and said, "Don't worry, they're not going to harm us." You got to remember he had his newborn in a baby seat in the car, and he had like a 3-year-old son and another son who is about 6 or 7 years old, I believe. So they're in the car, and they see these stars that are actually coming towards them. And then he sees this red orb that starts moving through the grass, through the scrub that's off to his right. Later on, he said that he thought it was almost like the way that you would play with a cat with a laser pointer. It was diverting his attention away from what was traveling towards them to this little, like basketball-sized red orb of light. So he's watching this, and suddenly from the right-hand side, traveling, just barreling towards him, he said it was the silver flying saucer straight out of a 1950s movie. He said that it reflected everything. It didn't have its own lights, but it was lit by the phase of the moon. We figured out the exact date of this because he knew what the phase of the moon was, because he could see it, reflected back at him. But anyhow, this thing traveled past him as fast as you could blink your eye. And 8 hours later, he and his wife found themselves leaning up against the bumper of their car, both feeling like they had run 5-10 miles, just exhausted. The 3 kids were asleep in the car where they had left them, but they had 8 hours of missing time. They got back into the car, and they traveled the rest of the way to Bakersfield. And, of course, the relatives had all kinds of questions for them. Where were you? We were worried about you. It's the age before cell phones, of course. That was my first unknown that I ever closed. It had so much evidence, and so, it was like a full family that went through this. And
did you talk to both the husband and wife and any of the children?
The wife will not talk about it. She will not talk about it. They wound up actually divorcing over this. She treated it a different way than he did. For him, he started reading books about UFOs and trying to see what was out there. His ex-wife went to the Christian church, and she decided that the whole thing was the devil and an act of the devil, and she won't talk about it. But I've been speaking with this guy for over 4 years now, and his story is always the same. When you speak with him, he's speaking of memories, and all the details coalesce together into the same picture, including the phase that the moon was in. It was exactly a month after his newborn was born. It was as soon as they could actually take him out of the house.
What year was that?
This was back in 1992, and there were a lot of similar abduction stories that happened in the same area in the same year. His was one of many that happened in 1992. It was a hot year for mass abductions. So cases that I've closed. I have a lot of sightings from aerospace indicators. As far as now, you were asking me about myself, and
yes, I wondered if you had any personal.
I had never had a sighting.
What did you have personally?
I had never had a sighting myself. I had never seen a UFO of any kind. But a week after I became a field investigator, I had what I would call a classic a visitation from the little gray guys. The little gray guys with the black eyes. Now, I had just...
Where were you when it happened? And what were you doing?
I was at home. My wife and I were living in Burbank, California. We rented a little house there that we had been in for some years. We had a cricket problem in our bedroom. It was always, you could always hear the crickets, mating call in there. Sometimes it would be quite a din. It could get quite loud. But I had just closed a couple, like my first 2 MUFON cases. One was a Mylar balloon that somebody mistook for a UFO, and the other one was a lens flare on his camera, right? So, but I was still feeling my oats. I actually had done, the big, the scary Form 30 that MUFON uses with their sighting reports, and I had, all my T's were crossed and my I's were dotted. And so I at the same time I had been listening to a little bit of the Stephen Greer stuff and about the CE5 contact. And earlier in my life I had done meditation. So I tried it, and I just sent out a message. It's like, what am I, chopped liver? I want to be abducted. I want to meet you guys. Come and abduct me. Why don't you? I want to see you guys. Now, of course, I was thinking Space Brothers. I was thinking Valiant Thor, or maybe a lovely, blonde, tall female alien, But what happened was I lay down to go to sleep. I was sort of semi-recumbent in my bed. I had pillows behind my back, and I was just starting to fall asleep when the crickets stopped. And our room filled up with this blue light. Now, it seemed to be coming through the window at first, but then it seemed like it pervaded the very wall. It's like it went through the concrete and the boarding of our very house. So I'm lying there watching this. I'm just like shaking my head going, what the, I think I had just gotten my first iPhone at the time, and I'm looking over to it to see if that, maybe the iPhone lit the room up. No. iPhone was upside down on the bedside table. It became very, very quiet, almost like, the old Get Smart TV show where they had the cone of silence. It was kind of like that. And I felt myself going into what now I can only call like a hypnagogic state, where it was somewhere between dream state and somewhere between waking state. Although I hadn't fallen asleep yet. I mean, I had looked at my iPhone. I remember every single detail. Now, I'm a nurse. I've taken care of many quadriplegics in my life. A great fear of my own is to become a quadriplegic. I don't want to become a quadriplegic. I love taking care of quadriplegics. I don't want to be one. Well, I can't move my fingers. I can't move my feet. I can't move my arms. I can't move my head. I can move my eyes.
I hate when they do that.
Yeah. Now, the corner of our room kind of did what I can only describe as like a Scooby-Doo cartoon, where it would go, blah, 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 It was like this swirling thing that was going on. And it opened up, and you could see distance there. Now, the weird thing is our neighbor's house was maybe 15, 20 feet max away from our house. But I could see distance. Like, it looked like depth. Like I was looking into this white, bright tunnel where the light is coming through. And it shouldn't have been there. I mean, it's not like there was a space there where outside of our bedroom. So something had happened. I guess that they can manipulate space itself. They can manipulate, maybe it was dimensional tunnel, Einstein-Rosen bridge. Who knows? You tell me. I couldn't move these 4 little figurines. Very insectoid looking, more so than you see in most pictures, very rounded heads. They seemed naked, like they weren't wearing anything, but yet there was no genitalia. It's not like you could see a belly button or, these guys slid up to my, almost like they were pulled in, like they were on ice skates and somebody was pulling them in. It wasn't like they ambulated up to my bed, but they're suddenly around my bed. I'm horrified. I can't move. This is not Val Thor. It's certainly not Space Brothers. It was very confusing. Right. I didn't take any psychotropic drugs. Hadn't had LSD since high school, so it wasn't a flashback. And they took energy and blood from me. I never got like a kind message from them. I didn't get a telepathic message. Some people, like that case that I closed, his wife said, "Don't worry, they're not going to harm us." Well, I didn't get that message, so I thought, well, maybe they're going to harm me, But what happened was when they left the same way. The best that I can remember the time, and I don't know if something is missing. I don't know if they just did it in my room or if they took me somewhere, but they slid back out the same way that they slid in. I felt like I was completely drained. The light started to slowly fade. After the little tunnel that was in the corner of our room, it irised out. And I could finally shake my wife. I shook my wife and I was screaming and she would not wake up. I kept shaking her. And finally I was able to rouse her and she looked at me and she said, "Oh my God, is this what I have to look forward to? You joined this crazy UFO group, these MUFON guys, and is this what I have to, So, that was all I heard about for the next 2 days. My wife didn't want to talk with me. She thought that I'd gone crazy, or she really didn't know what was going on, that I had some kind of a psychic breakdown, an episode of some sort. 2 nights later, I was asleep and my wife shook me awake. And again, our room was this light. It was coming through the window. It seemed to be coming through the very walls. She shook me. And she shook me awake and she said, "Earl," she said, "you need to tell your little friends that they need to leave us the she said the word, alone. I already have insomnia how it is, and I don't need this." So, and the light kind of flipped out and she rolled over, went back to sleep. It was the strangest thing. I couldn't sleep. My eyes were open. I sat there. It was like, what the heck? What is going on? 2 nighs after that, we both woke up. It was the light again. It was coming through the window. It was coming through the walls. We both ran to the window, looked up, and you could see light coming down from the sky, but you couldn't hear anything like a helicopter. We're thinking, we're trying to think this out rationally, and there was no rational explanation for this. There were certainly exclamations that we made, but there was no explanations, So the light, and then what, this is the funny part, because you hear about screen memories, people will be left with memories of 4-foot tall owls, and they have alien contact. What we saw the patio light at our neighbor's house. And my wife says, "Do you think it was the patio light?" It's like, no, it was like a giant spotlight the size of our house, but I think that we were we were sort of being given that little, like, well, you can blame it on this if you're uncomfortable with what happened,
Well, your mind tries to make sense of it.
Yeah,
your mind tries to fill in the gaps to make sense of it. So, but you knew it wasn't your patio light because it was too bright.
No, it was It was pervading the structure of our home. It was very strange.
Right.
And there were
so it was coming through.
There was no sound. It was completely silent. 3 nights in a row, or 3 nights in the same week. So, when this happened, I'm friends with Peter Robbins, who worked with Bud Hopkins. He was Bud Hopkins' guy. And I called Peter and I told him, and I asked him about it. And even he was just like kind of gobsmacked. It's like you join MUFON and you get abducted, It's not a real good, And that for a long time I wouldn't tell my story. I want to be the UFO investigator. I don't want to be the investigated necessarily. So, but what I would do is when I would get a new field investigator, I would tell them my story, because I said, well, you need this little caveat. You need to know, this is a very, very strange phenomenon. And if you disturb the universe, well, the universe just might disturb you back. And
right.
Since I've started working for Kathleen,
so what do you think of it? What do you think of your incident now that you've had some time to reflect on it and some years have gone past?
I think that it's certainly been helpful in my work with Kathleen Martin and the MUFON's Experiencer research team, because when I speak with people about their extraordinary events that they've gone through, I have empathy for it now, and I understand that it may sound like a crazy story, but hey, I've got a story of my own.
Hold on, we'll be back after this commercial break. We're at the top of the hour. We'll be back in 5.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look. Just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another? Extra big-ass fries.
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
trouble.
trouble.
Come on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning, how to do everything website, all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free. But there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
It happens more often than we can imagine. In my case, I was sitting at home, and out of nowhere, I just started feeling uncomfortable. Then it got worse, and I started perspiring. I tried to ignore it, but I waited too long. The chest pain came as we were driving to the hospital emergency. I felt my life clock begin to tick. I barely survived. There was lots of damage done to my heart.
Okay.
What do I do now? I was lucky. I took a leap of faith and tried a 7-herb formula with hawthorn, garlic, cayenne, and more called Extendivite. Herbs have been used for thousands of years to keep us healthy. If you're not using Extendivite as a preventative supplement, maybe it's time to start. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix of Revolution Radio, and I'm Janet Kira Lesson with Dr. Sasha Alex Lesson, and we're on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, also revolution.radio, and our producer is Thomas Becker, and our guest is Earl Grey Anderson from MUFON, the Assistant State Director for MUFON in Southern California. But before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on revolution.radio and make your donation this week, because we really, really, really need your donations to keep bringing this show and other shows like this to you. And Mad Painter, what's our, how's our fundraising?
We got $254, and it's only the second, so we're not doing too bad.
Not too bad. Okay, we made it last month.
Oh yeah, we just.
Make our goal.
we
just
got
made
some
it. Okay.
owners that cover the end of it if we don't make it. So.
Okay. So, let's see, Dr. Lesson, what would you like to say before we bring back Earl Grey?
Well, okay, yeah. I know you used to do comedy. So, what's your best UFO joke?
Back to you.
Who's the comedian? I don't do comedy, but.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
My best UFO joke? Oh, Lord, I can't put me on the spot there. They're usually visual jokes.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. You don't have to do it just because he asked you.
No, well, I think our visitors have a sense of humor. I mean, I truly do. Mm-hmm. It's an ironic sense of humor. And now, we were talking a little bit during break, Sasha and I, and I was mentioning that you guys kind of have a spiritual, attitude towards the whole phenomenon. And I do too, actually. I mean, and now the story that I was, what I was telling you, my contact story is sounds very scary, and it was scary when it happened. But I'll say that the takeaway from it now when I speak with many experiencers through the, MUFON's experiencer research team, which I'm part of, and you hear people tell kind of harrowing stories like my own, but then if you ask them, you say, now, if you could make it stop tomorrow, if you could make it all stop, would you have it stop? And you would be surprised. Maybe 10-15% will say, yes, I would want it to stop. It's just all evil and horrible, and it's destroying my life. And there are people that feel that way about it. But now for myself and for many others, that it seemed to open up the floodgates of synchronicity for me when I had my experience. If you go and you study with Shaolin monks, they may hit you in the back with a wooden sword every now and then to get their point across, that it's not always Reese's Pieces that E.T. gives you. But it's not like they're handing you a poisoned apple either, I don't think. I think that we're being told something, that they're trying to wake us up. And I think that I was certainly put in my place. I'm calling out to the universe, come and abduct me, and well, there you go. Here is your wish. What is your next wish from the genie?
What you ask for.
You have to watch out. Genies are scary, kind of scary figures. They can, save your life, but they can also make it more difficult. But there's always a lesson in there. So I would just say, respect the universe. Remember, if you disturb the universe, it may disturb you back. But I think that we are that they are trying to take us to a new level. The one thing that we see over and over and over again, especially with military sightings, is that they seem to be telling us that nukes are really, really a bad thing. That our warlike nature is something that I think that, people seem to get pacifistic messages when they have contact. That we're told, that the environment, that it's very, very much like, the earth is your mother and what are you doing to her? And so there's definitely this message that's being spoken to us in mass. And recently, I know that there was a study that was done out of MIT. I believe that, it was back a few years ago because Bud Hopkins was still around. I think it was Bud Hopkins, John Mack, David Jacobs, but they did a survey and they came up with this astounding number that 10 to 15% of people in this country believe that they have been abducted by ET. That's a huge number.
Right.
That's a huge number. And it's not just, if they just wanted to gather human DNA, if if they're doing that because we're going to blow ourselves up and they want to repopulate humans somewhere else, that's one idea behind it. I would think that they would have enough material by now. I mean, we know that this has been happening for at least 30, 40 years since the Betty and Barney Hill encounter. So what exactly are they taking and visiting people for? So
what are you cataloging this? Like, are you saying these are the abductees and they're getting used for genetic material? Like, I'm an ambassador. I interview tons of people, so I'm kind of doing cases like you are, but in a more loose format here on the radio show. And then sometimes I do private regression sessions. My husband and I, take people through their experiences and help them flesh them out and get more details. So we find that there are those who perceive it as abductions, right? And then over time, when you work with them, they get the realization that, this wasn't something that I'm a victim. I volunteered for this, that I was having that fight or flight knee-jerk gut reaction because we are unconscious, and then we have this contact, and we, of course, have our natural reflexes to it. But then when we wrap our heads around it and we remember the pieces that we forgot because of, the kune, or the trauma, then we get the details and we go, oh, wow, it's not what I was thinking. Like for me, for example, when I was a little girl, I saw this being come through an interdimensional portal, and it looked like a reptile. It was a tall, very tall person with I couldn't even see its face, and I would just go into absolute fear, and I'd try to run. I couldn't run. It held me like in a tractor beam, and then we'd have an engagement. And then I thought I would break free, but he'd probably release me, and then I'd go into the house and be terrified and just drop to the floor and say, I'm not going to tell my parents. But when I explored that in therapy and in hypnosis, and even just in reflective therapy, I realized that was just because it was something outside of my normal reality. Reptilian tall beings, 6 to 8 feet tall, don't come through interdimensional portals in your backyard in a normal world, right? So how do you deal with things like that as a MUFON investigator, or what do you call it, the STAR team? What is the STAR team? The
STAR team is different.
Yeah.
The STAR team is more, that is for, like Leonard Stringfield. It's based on, I've become a STAR team member. If we have a UFO crash, I will go out to it. They'll deploy me to it. We have certain ways of collecting evidence. We have certain people that we're going to contact. The military isn't one of those, by the way. Not going to contact because we know what they'll do. So, but the STAR team, I've not really gone out on a STAR team case. We had one that was sort of iffy. We had a multi-person sighting of a UFO that was reported by two different sources the same night, that was out in Azusa, where we had a hover point, and I went, door to door, handing out business cards, interviewing people, and trying to get more information. But we didn't have a crashed vehicle, and we wanted to go and take Geiger counter and soil samples and et cetera. Unfortunately, the gentleman that owned the property was sort of, get off my lawn. This is against my religion, and you need to get out of here. This is the work of the devil. And so he sort of put the kibosh to that. So I haven't really gone out on a STAR team mission, so to speak, yet. But now with the experiencer research team, I've spoken with many, many, many experiencers. And I try not to guide them in how they should feel about it, because people are going to have their feelings about this. And I was trying, at one time I tried to, tell them the Shaolin monk allegory, and that this is, it may seem like a negative, but, if you could see a hip surgery, you would think that you were being tortured. I mean, this is why they put you out and you don't have memory of it. It's done for a reason like that. And the forgetfulness is a blessing, and it fixes you. And perhaps it's sort of like that. But I don't even go that far anymore, because you don't want to lead the person, first of all, and you have to respect the person's feelings. For some people, it's the most horrible thing that's ever happened to them, and they wish they could kill their entities. Sadly, I mean, I've and then there are other people where it's all, this sweet, cosmic, wonderful thing. But what I find, what you were talking about there, Janet, in your transition, oftentimes these visitations start as a child. It scares the person. At first, it seems like a horror film or something. And as you get older, you start to understand. And you start, I have one guy who's a Homeland Security agent, a very, kind of a mucky muck in the TSA. I can't mention his name because it could affect his employment, but for him, he started, a lot of people start having visitations at age 6 or age 7. They feel very confused at first, and as time goes by, they have the same entities that show up. And my Homeland Security agent gave them names. He had a couple years ago where he hadn't had a visit, and he was sad. It was like, what's happened? Where are my guys?
Where are my friends?
Where are my guys?
I know.
And for him, it's just opened up this deepness and this depth. I mean, he's just the nicest guy. I'm so glad that he's head of TSA in one of our major airports, because the guy is not going to go run for his stun gun or something right off. He's and he can, though. I mean, he's a black belt in karate. But the guy has sort of the mind of a Boy Scout and the valor of somebody like that. And he would be the first person to tell you that he believes that his visitations that have happened through his life are the thing that caused this beautiful transition in his life, So the takeaway from the phenomenon is very oftentimes this beautiful thing. I mean, for myself, it's the synchronicities that I experience, these meaningful coincidences that I have in my life, where I'll be thinking about something or somebody and the phone rings and that's them, and I'll think of a song and suddenly it's playing on the radio. I'll be walking down the street, think of a person, and suddenly they're walking on the opposite side of the street. I'll be talking with somebody about my experience and they have the same experience, and sometimes it's just like astronomical odds that are involved, and you look at it and it's like this little living miracle that happens to me every day, and it's ongoing, and I can track it back to when I had my encounter. I don't think of my encounter as an abduction. I don't think of it as a negative. I think of it as maybe like a cosmic.
So it feels spiritual to you?
Yes.
Does it feel more spiritual
Janet.
to you? Yeah, mine is very, very spiritual. But go ahead, sweetheart. What do you want to ask?
Oh, okay. If I may, from my perspective, when you view things from a status position, any status position, like they know more than you or whatever, they have higher technology, there's several things involved. And you might think you're just the vulnerable one, but in any transference relationship, there's also counter-transference. If you'll notice that when you said to the ETs, visit me, you were controlling them. You see, they need you to do their thing, and they are vulnerable too. You're in a relationship, and that's how we tend to disempower ourselves, because we live in a hierarchic society without realizing that there's vulnerabilities on both sides, and we can use that to make contact, because that's where we can empathize with each other, in my humble opinion.
That's wonderful. I love that, Sasha. I haven't really thought of that, but you're right. I mean, it is an interaction. It's not one side making contact. I mean, they are telepathic, as we know, and going into the human mind, it must be sort of a battleground right there. Because of course, humans have this great dichotomy going on and within ourselves, and we aren't all Shaolin monks. We aren't all on the mountaintop, and so for them to come and visit with us and commingle their thoughts with our own must be quite a daunting task on their side. You're right.
Now, is MUFON making any effort to kind of catalog the modern UFO experiencer contact movement and reach out to the people that are known while they're still alive, like the Kathleen Martins and all the, we miss Betty Hill. Because I've got a whole bunch of people that you might want to interview and catalog so that we have a documentation of the, modern 21st century experiencer contactees.
I would love to.
Them myself.
Send them to me.
I'd love to correlate with you. We'll talk about that afterwards.
I would love that. Yes, we do catalog this. What my main job with the experiencer research team, well, I have two different kinds of cases that I get. I get my, my CMS cases, which are UFO sightings, or sometimes people will have an abduction or a visitation, and they want me to go in and investigate it. And I will work as an investigator. I'll try to trip the person up at times. If I think that they're making something up whole cloth and it doesn't, something, and you'll get people that are, I had one guy that told me he was going to send his Anunnakis after me to give me cancer. I'm not kidding you. And it's like,
why would he do that?
Yes, I know. And he sent me photographs that he said were of an alien. It was a pair of sunglasses that he had stuck on his dashboard of his big rig truck, right? And the guy was just, it was just there was nothing that he was saying that really rang true. And I'll also have people that try to run hoaxes to see if they can fool us. Like I had a CGI expert recently that sent in a UFO video. And I did a little detective work, and I found out that they had a CGI company, and there was a public resume up that said, CGI realer than real life. So, I mean, you catch these guys, and so the CMS cases, sometimes we'll have people that want to make us look foolish or want to pounce on MUFON and say, hey, look at this, or they have, there's not a whole lot of money in ufology, as you guys probably know.
No, you're not going to get rich that way, no.
No, you're not. But I think there are people that misunderstand that and think that, if they go out and tell their story that they'll become the new Travis Walton. But for some reason, I think like my mother, if I got anything from my mother, I got her lie detector. My mom always had an internal lie detector, and that was another thing that she said. She said that Howard Hughes liked to send her places because she could always tell if somebody was lying or not. And he would have her check people out for employment for him. My mom actually had a background in law enforcement. She grew up in Iowa, and she was the first deputy sheriff in Muscatine, Iowa, first female deputy sheriff. This is back in the late 1930s, I guess. It was her first real job. And she said mostly, they hired her to take guys, from the drunk tank and let them go on Monday morning or something, but my mom did have that background in law enforcement, and she was a very good human lie detector. And it could be really upsetting as a teenager, I'll tell you, how was that date with that cheerleader, Earl? How did that go? And there went the Spock, Dr., Mr. Spock eyebrow again. And, she always seemed to know. But, where was I going with this?
You said she is a lie detector, people doing the CGI. Oh God,
yes.
I don't know.
I think that I got that. I think that I got that from my mom, where, if I have a hoax, I usually know that it's a hoax within about a minute, sometimes faster than that.
But the next step that Richard Dolan always says is investigate the hoaxer, because there's a whole story. Who's doing this and why and where, and follow the money if there's money involved. And the hoaxes can be fascinating stories sometimes.
Oh yeah. And I've had some good ones. I mean, I had a guy that wanted to tell me he'd seen a TR-3B triangular UFO. And he had this very elaborate video that he took, but it turned out, I figured it out. The guy took a kite and he put, little diode lights on each corner of the kite, had a red diode in the middle and like a laser pointer, and he had the laser pointer going off. And he flew this over Venice Beach, so you could see the ocean in the background. But he got really sloppy. He didn't turn his video off in time. And for some reason, he didn't edit it down. So you saw a TR-3B crash into the waves. and I had to say, I didn't get a Star Team call. There wasn't a UFO crash over in Venice Beach, or I would have gotten the call. Nobody, saw a TR-3B, vehicle crash into the waves. So, what is this? It was obviously, and plus it looked exactly like a kite. So what I did was I went and I looked on historic weather on weatherunderground.com, or is it .org? I forget. But Weather Underground is a really good site if you want to find out exact time when the wind died down. And I had the video and it had the little time readout on the bottom, and it absolutely correlated with what happened weather-wise. There were like 10-mile-an-hour winds, and exactly when this thing fell out of the sky, the wind suddenly went down to 0. So he literally lost the wind in his kite, and I put that down as a hoax, slash hoax keystroke. He was trying to mess with us. But I get those, but I don't get a whole lot of those. I'll tell you guys. As far as hoaxes go, I'll get one maybe every couple of months. Most people, when they put in a UFO sighting report, they've seen something that they don't understand. Sometimes it's a planet, sometimes it's, Venus, or it's a, RC drones now are the big bugaboo. Everybody, I just bought my grandson a radio controlled drone for Christmas, and he's probably creating UFO reports out there as I speak, people watching him fly this thing, especially when it's on flash mode. Now I'll get these videos of drones and you get so that you can recognize them, but people aren't being disingenuous. They just see something and they don't understand what it is. The reports that I love. Now, Dr. J. Allen Hynek talked about the 5 to 10% of the UFO reports that come in that are interesting. And those are the ones that you try to debunk yourself, that you look at every single side, that you try to figure it out, and there is just no explanation for them. And those are the ones that just, impel me to keep on going and make it, I just love what I do so much, and it's so meaningful to me. And people see UFOs. I mean, they see a lot of them out in California, especially. We get more UFO reports in Southern California than anywhere else in the world, and that's month by month. I think Florida a couple of times they had more than us, but usually not. It's usually Southern California. So ET likes Southern California for some reason.
You don't have any idea why. Yeah,
they like Mount Adams. Oh, yes, they like Mount Adams, and Enki lives in Shasta. They're ETs that are among the city that just burned down. That was the favorite place for Valiant Thor. That city in the woods.
You're right. That's so sad too. I mean, it's just such a horrible thing. And so you guys you're obviously in the know about Mount Shasta, and there are a lot of strange reports from out of there. A lot of interesting reports from Mount Shasta area.
What do you think about Shasta?
I think something's going on. I think something's going on there. I think that there probably is, it's pure hypothesis, but there are a lot of reports that, my friend Ruben Uriarte, he's the state director. Ruben, he's state director of Northern California. So I think he usually gets the reports from that area. But there is definitely a stream of strange stories of tall blonde people that they'll pay for things in jewels or gold, and usually not using cash, and just very strange stories. So I think there's certainly something to that. Why?
Neil Freer told us very specifically that when he was a 12-year-old or so, Enki had him aboard his craft and talked to him about the return of the Anunnaki, and that they were going to try to clean up the mess that they've left on the planet.
Well,
that's what Neil said.
We don't want them to come back and enslave us again, right? That's not necessarily the thing.
Exactly. And I've just been studying slavery lately and did a comprehensive study of it, and it's like it's been with us from the get-go. It was the Anunnaki model, and it's going on to this very day, at a minimum, as debt slavery among most of the population.
Yeah. I mean, we're all slaves to our jobs, right? I mean, I am, I'm sure you guys are, to a certain extent as well. I mean, we all have to pay our bills, and in a way that's a form of slavery. Seems to be built into humankind, and it might be a good thing.
And it's
gone.
Built into the caste system in India, where people are virtual slaves. In most places in the world, women are slaves to their husbands or their brothers. There is actual, real kidnapping and slavery going on a huge extent that Americans don't like to think about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there is. I work for an Indian couple. I take care of their special needs son. I can't give you a whole lot of information because of HIPAA laws and all that, but they believe in the caste system, and I think that it can be very difficult to live under that. Everybody, I mean, if you're in a lower caste, there's really no way to get out of it. You have to go through this life, and hopefully you'll be in a higher caste system next time. It's kind of it is a form of slavery. It is.
So what do you think about the secret space information and all the super soldiers and people that are coming forth? What do you think about that? I know MUFON had a conference last year, and they have one coming up. When's it, the one in June?
We have one in July that's coming up. July is coming up in Irvine, California this year. I think you're referring to the Secret Space Program Symposium, which was 2 years ago. They had Corey Good. Yes. Corey Good and Michael Salas and some of those guys at it. And, I hear a lot about the secret space program, and strangely, Howard Hughes' name pops up in the story, with Tompkins' story about this, who he lost right after he passed away.
Yeah, right after
symposium. And I think that there's a kernel of truth in that. I think that some of this has been sort of blown up out of proportion as things tend to get blown up out of proportion. I mean, Philip Corso. I believe Philip Corso I love Philip Corso. And I've read his own account of things. And I think that The Day After Roswell, I mean, that book itself is where I finally kind of put my mom's story together with everything. I mean, because everything that Corso had talked about was what my mom had talked about. So I think that, we have reverse engineered stuff. I think that perhaps we've been gifted or granted a certain craft like Lazar has talked about. I think that there's probably truth to Bob Lazar's story. I don't know that he's actually a physicist because he doesn't really sound like a physicist from the people that I know. I mean, Stanton Friedman thought that he was, full cloth liar, but I think Stanton was wrong in this. My mom used to look for unschooled talent. That was one thing my mom did. And I knew somebody that my mom sent out to Northrop to fix their mainframe computer system. And he was 17 years old. He hadn't been to college yet. We went to the same high school. He disappeared for 3 months. He came back. He brought these computer readout sheets that he had, circled certain numbers with a grease pencil and said, well, this is why Northrop needed me. This was their problem, was this number right here. I looked at all these numbers and, the guy had a gift for it. He could see what didn't belong there. So, there's people that can do this, and there's a great interest in people that can look at things sideways or in a different way. Mm-hmm. So I think that perhaps Bob Lazar was one of those guys. He's a very, very, very gifted guy. I personally know the person that used to drive him to MIT and pick him up, or Caltech. It was Caltech. He would take him to Caltech, and then he would pick him up at the end of the day. So we do know that Bob Lazar took certain classes in physics. Now, whether he was enrolled in Caltech, that we don't know. You can go to a class and sit in it if you want to, but you just don't get the parchment after the class, right? You don't get the parchment that says doctor. So I think that perhaps that's what Bob Lazar was. And I believe his story. I think that he saw the sports model and the other things that were there. Perhaps some were gifted to us and others were crash retrievals. Yeah. So, and I think that if we have been studying these things for 72 years, since Roswell, we must have made some kind of headway. So I do think that there's probably a secret space probe. The TR-3B triangle people see, those sound manufactured. They have human attributes to them. They seem like they were made in a factory. They all look the same. UFOs that are esoteric and that are from out there, they don't all look the same. They might be saucer shaped and have a cupola on top, but that's it. Everything else is just kind of, a grab bag. But the TR-3Bs seem like they're manufactured. So, yeah, I think there's definitely a space program.
So aren't they ours? From what I understand, the TR-3B is ours, reverse engineered?
I think so. I had one person who told me that her father used to work for Boeing. And she said that he referred to it as the new space shuttle. And that was about 20 years ago when he spoke of this as the new space shuttle. I get a lot of aerospace engineers, and I always check it out. I mean, they have to show me their badge. They have to give me some proof if I'm doing their case. They might say that they do laser calibration on, the B-1 or B-2 bomber or something, but you can say anything. I want to see your badge. So, and I've had verified aerospace guys that keep on seeing these things flying over by the Skunk Works Boeing area over in Palmdale. It's usually 3 a.m. It's usually accompanied by a Cessna or another plane. It just travels silently like nobody's business, and the one guy saw it land behind the wall. He couldn't tell if it was the Boeing plant or the Lockheed plant. But, this guy was sort of sweating bullets telling me his story. He was afraid to talk about it. But he told me, he said, well, do you know how I can get on that project? That's what I want to do. I saw this, work on it, how do I get in there? It's like you would have had to talk to my mom. My mom could have helped you.
Right.
She's not here anymore.
Yeah.
I think those are out. I know there are people that disagree.
Were you there when your mom passed?
I was there right afterwards.
When she passed?
I was there
right afterwards. So she didn't get to say her last words.
She did, actually. I kissed her on the head. I told her I loved her was the last words I spoke to her. And next thing I knew, I got a call. She was in the emergency room of Los Robles hospital out here, and she had passed away. I didn't know she had passed away yet, but I went there, and well, there she was. And God bless the nurses.
Earl, what? This is Earl. When you're in a meditative state, it's really useful to invoke your mother's spirit and ask her to communicate with you, and even identify with her and let her speak through your vocal cords and tell you the things that you've always wanted to know. It's not closed to you. You can, because you know your mother and the expressions on her face, you've been getting telepathic inferences from those things and just really reflect on it. She's got the information and she can still give it to you, I think. At least take that as a post-hypnotic suggestion and imagine that you're hypnotized.
Thank you, Sasha. That's wonderful. Wonderful. I mean, I know my mom really well. I know that my mom's proud of what I'm doing. She's probably scared that I dipped my toe in this whole thing, but I think that she knew from the outset that I was going to be absolutely obsessed with it, because I always have been. I was obsessed with it as a child. You know, I've been obsessed with it. So I thank you. I kind of do that already. And I feel like I've gotten certain, eye winks from my mom and nudges. But I don't know. I mean, part of what I have to do with MUFON is the skeptical thing. And, I always will have that. But I'll tell you, there's a balance between that and a balance between being open. And I think it goes back to my mentor's thing, is like, keep an open mind, but don't let your brain fall out, right?
Exactly. Right. So in psychology, that comes down to embrace the opposites within you, because they both have truth. And so I think the skeptic and the believer both have some core needs that you can meet by appreciating your ever-changing ecology.
We have as many neurons in our brains as there are stars in the universe. Within our brains, there is the entirety of the universe. And every single time that our minds synapse, right? When you have a synaptic process happen in your mind, a thought process, it's like quantum entanglement happening within our own skulls. And I think that there's a correlation between the entirety of the universe and the entirety of the cerebral cortex within each of our skulls. So I think that we all have that connectiveness, and we all have that cosmic consciousness. It's right there. It walks with us as we, walk into 7-Eleven or, to the luau or whatever we're doing. It's always there. Mm-hmm. So it's just acknowledging it, I think, and trusting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what Carolyn Corey says, and it's very interesting, is that when each of us has a singularity inside of ourselves that's free of time, space, and our intellectual considerations, and that articulates with every other singularity, or the fractal of everything in the universe is in every aspect of the universe, and we are in every aspect too.
Yes, I believe that. And I believe the universe is built on fractals. I mean, the Mandelbrot fractal it pops up on T-shirts and tie-dyes and music. Bach, wrote more or less music that was fractals. It was repeating patterns that overlay, and that's the way. If you look at a leaf, the patterns on a fern, it all is in the mathematics that Dr. Mandelbrot found, and it's very simple. It's just like it's multiplication and division. It doesn't even go into higher math, It's just kind of, but it's that repetition, and it's at a deep level, and it goes on forever, like the universe itself. I was talking about Arthur C. Clarke earlier. Arthur C. Clarke said that the Mandelbrot fractal is the thumbprint of God. And that was from Clarke. Yeah. Who claimed he was an atheist, but I don't really believe it. He just didn't like religion. He didn't like religion. I don't
either. It's just that everything fits together too well for it to be random. And when they look at everything is related to everything else, and it couldn't not be related.
Yeah. I agree with you. I remember reading this book by Robert Jastrow back in the 1980s called Disturbing the Universe. And it was this wonderful, kind of cosmic book, but it was by a scientist, as Robert Jastrow, PhD. He'd worked with, JPL and other groups. And the way that he kind of finished his book was he said that in the end, all these scientists are climbing up this precipice, and they finally get to the very top, They white knuckle it over the edge of this cliff and pull themselves up, and there are all these philosophers in robes with long beards, around the fire, kind of like this cosmic weenie roast, and they look at them and they say, "What took you? What took you so long?" And that's kind of isn't it strange how this is working out? The more we find out about the way the universe works, the more it sounds like magic.
Right. So what do you think is the future of MUFON? Where can you go? Where can you take this? What can you do to help us get disclosure? Well, MUFON started 50 years ago. Just like 3 days ago was our 50-year anniversary. There were 20 years before that where we were the Midwestern UFO network, right? So, but when we became the Mutual UFO network, we became global, and that was 50 years ago. I think that MUFON is a powerful organization because everybody knows about us. If you see a UFO, people know to go to MUFON, and they'll give us their reports. Thank God, God bless these people for doing. I mean, if you call up the Air Force or the police department or the airport, usually they'll tell you, well, we don't take UFO reports, but go to MUFON.com. So people know to report their UFOs to us. And I believe that the heart of MUFON is good. That, there's always controversy around this subject because everybody has their pet project or their pet idea. We've got people that think that aliens are demons. We have other people that think that aliens are gods. We have other people that think, like I do, that aliens are sort of like us, except just very, very advanced. But we're all under one tent, and I think that that's the purpose that MUFON serves, is that if you've seen a UFO or you're interested in UFOs or you've had a visit or you feel like you've been abducted or you're afraid or you're thrilled, that you're going to be able to find somebody who will relate to you in MUFON because we have a huge tent and there's room for all of us under that tent. And that's the beauty of MUFON. There's a lot of people that wish we were more scientific or less scientific or more spiritual or less. But I think that all of those aspects are gathered under this one tent. And I think that we're going to continue on. I think that if the puzzle is ever solved, that there still will be a MUFON because this is where we can gather and talk about it. So that's my feelings about MUFON. I love MUFON. Yeah. If you couldn't tell. Yeah, MUFON's great. I gave a report, 25 years ago, so I love MUFON. Go ahead, Sash.
I think if you just skip the ontological question, this question of this reality status of the experience, and just deal with the experience in its own terms, then its message can unfold. And so when I work with people, I don't try to badger them for information that I can validate or not. All I'm concerned with is that they are returned to being the chooser in their life.
That's good. I mean, I agree with you, Sasha. And I'll tell you, I don't badger people. I mean, I may have given you the wrong impression when I say, it's like our CMS cases. When somebody puts in a computer management system case, is what CMS stands for. And that's when somebody says, I want an investigator to investigate this and either prove it or disprove it, but I want it, I think this is watertight, what I went through, and then we'll do that. We can offer that. But I'm never gleefully going to dance on somebody's case and say, well, you saw a drone. That's not part of my makeup, I mean, a good, for instance, I have a sushi chef and he and his daughter were out goofing around in the park one day. And his daughter said, Dad, what's that? She pointed up. He looked up and he saw this flashing light. So he got his he got his iPhone out and he took a video of this. And for them, it was this magic moment. Now, he showed me this video, and I'm well acquainted with how mylar balloons look when they reflect the sun and they spin in the wind. And this was a mylar balloon spinning in the wind. It was unequivocal. Was I going to tell him that? No. I told him how special that you and your daughter had that moment. You hold that to yourself, and that's like this special thing between you and your daughter. Now, if he had been an actual MUFON case, I would have had to have put down in the case that it was a mylar balloon, because that's kind of But I would certainly not dance on that, and I might not even tell the person that saw it that that's what they saw. I'm very, very careful not to quash anybody's experience. I'm very careful about that.
Glad to hear that. Thank you.
Now, what do you do with someone like Travis Walton? If you were to catalog Travis Walton's case, or somebody else that's been around for the last 10, 15 years, I was interviewed recently, and it seemed to be a lot of questions. It's from a MUFON person that was they were focused on abduction, and I won't reveal the case person, but she and I are both experiencers that have gone way beyond that. And so, do you have different questions for those who've been in this for a while?
Oh yeah. Well, when I met Travis, I hung out with him for a long time, but he's another guitar slinger. And interestingly enough, really didn't talk about UFOs very much. We talked about guitar stomp boxes. And Travis is a sweet guy. I really, really love Travis. He's spot on. Absolutely. What he went through. Just all the little details, they correlate to all the details of other people that have gone through similar things. And that there's an arc to his experience, that he thought at one time that his experience was this malevolent thing, and he's recently come to the conclusion that no, they actually did surgery on him. He ran towards a UFO. The UFO gave him a heart attack. They saved his life. It took them 5 days to fix him, is what it took. So I love Travis, and I do ask people that have gone through this sort of thing. That's always on my mind. I want to know what people experienced. I want to know the details. I want to know about the beings. I want to know what it felt like to be communicated with, because I've never been communicated with that way. Hasn't happened yet. I feel like I've had little downloads, little psychic nudges that are probably from ET, but I can't prove that, and that's, but definitely Travis has experienced that. He knows unequivocally that that's what it was, and I'm very interested in that sort of stuff. Peter Robbins is another person I talk to a lot. It's just what a great.
I love Peter.
Yeah, he's just, isn't he the best? He's just the best. No hokey pokey.
I'll have to have him back on again.
Yeah, you should have him on again. Yeah, I love Peter.
I should. It's been a couple years. So if I wanted to have you take my story, is that possible?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I can put your story into MUFON, but if you actually want to have it investigated, it's going to be somebody that's in Hawaii. That's the thing, is that we do it regionally. We do it regionally. Unless your story took place in California. If it took place in California at some point.
My story took place all over the world, because wherever I go, it happens.
Well, if it happened in California, then just tell me that part and we can weave the whole thing into it. I'd love to take
Okay, I'll think about my California part. Okay, I'll
leave the rest of that in there. We can talk about the rest. There just has to be a certain point where it was concentrically happening here, And that's another thing I love about MUFON. It's regional, and we have people everywhere,
Yes. Okay. We're running out of time. We have about 3 more minutes. What would you like and Tosh, do you have a final question for Kevin? Or for Who are we? Earl, do you have a final question for Earl?
Well, I want you to tell about your websites and your books and all those kind of things.
I don't have any books yet. I will have a book when I can figure out when I can write it. You can find me on Facebook. I'm just Earl Grey. Living in Southern California. You'll see that it says Earl Grey, Chief Investigator for MUFON, musician and nurse. It's pretty easy to find me. I'm sort of up to my tally as far as friend requests goes, but there's always people dropping out, so I'll eventually get you in there if you want to friend me. And my Facebook page is open for everybody to read. I don't have it blocked from anybody. So if you want to, see what I'm doing, I usually communicate through Facebook. As far as my music goes, you can find a couple of CDs by my old folk duo Piper Gray. You can find that on both Amazon, on iTunes, as well as CD Baby, and you can get it as a download or as a physical CD. We have a couple of CDs up there. As far as anything else, just find me on Facebook. Get a hold of me that way is the best way. You can also get a hold of me if you go to MUFON.com and you go into the directory. I'm in there, and you can get a hold of me that way. And now everything I've been talking about, you too can do. If you want to be a field investigator, you want to do, like shoes on the road, field investigations of UFOs, go to MUFON.com and click on, how I become a field investigator. It'll pop right up for you, and we would love to have you, because we're only as strong of an organization as our people. And it's a worldwide organization, and it truly is mutual UFO network. So we want you, and you can do this as well. And I guess that's kind of...
And the conference, once again?
Now you can go and see the alien. I'll be on the MUFON panels at Aliens here in Los Angeles.
Okay, sorry, we're out of time. I have to send to me. I'll put it on the site. Thank you very much for everybody for coming. Much love and blessings, and aloha.
Aloha. It's great to be talking.
Aloha.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons. Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, your carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply, though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world.
Hey everyone, it's Barbara Jean Lindsay, the Cosmic Oracle. If you have questions about your past lives or future plans, need answers from the cosmos about your love life or career, or just want to keep your finger on the pulse of the planet, check out my show, The Cosmic Oracle, here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free. But there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Looking for a nightcap to fill your listening needs? Come join us on Spaced Out Radio with me, Dave Scott, right here on Revolution Radio. Monday through Friday for 3 hours a night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we will take you down the supernatural path. From ET contact to the paranormal and all of the spiritual, cryptid, and conspiracy stories in between. You can find us right here on Revolution Radio, at spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter.